Hey everybody, my name is Stacia and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going over the books that I really want to reread. So, I am not a huge rereader, but lately this year I've been feeling like I really want to reread a lot of things, and there are definitely some certain books that I want to reread, and a lot of these actually are either ones that I read a super long time ago or pretty recently. There are some on here that I gave like 4 stars or 4.5 stars, but I think about all the time, and I think that they're actually a favorite, and I could definitely just bump up the rating to a 5-star, which I do a lot. I do change my ratings on Goodreads a lot. They fluctuate all the time for a book that I read months ago, but I really would like to reread some of these just in general because I just love them so much and they were so impactful. And just because a book is not on here doesn't mean that I don't love it. I really did not include books that I was not finished with the series yet, so if I still have more books in the series. For example, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I still have the 3rd book in that series, and usually when I'm rereading a book, it's because I want to experience that vibe and those characters again, which you can often do if you continue with the series. So I still have books to read in the series. I did not include them on this list for the most part, and also I did not include books that I've already reread once. So Red, White, and Royal Blue, Dear Ava, those are some of my favorites that I would love to reread again, but I've already reread those both once. Me rereading a book says a lot. So I think I have 20 books on this list, 20 books / series, and so these are books I really want to read like as quickly as possible, but I'll probably be rereading these over the next year to year and a half because, you know, I have to work them into other things, but for me, that's quick. So we're just going to start getting into it, and most of these books I do own, they're just at home, so I'll have to pop in the covers. I don't normally keep books that I've already read here with me. I do have a couple with me, but not a ton. So the first one is actually the Hunger Games series, and I've always been a reader my entire life. I feel like most people who have BookTube have been readers since they were a child, even if they went through phases where they didn't read. And I was reading as a child, but when I moved down here, and I think even like 4th grade, I feel like I stopped reading around like 3rd grade-ish, and I moved down here right before 5th grade. And I still wasn't huge into reading, but then one of my friends, she asked me if I wanted to go see, I think Catching Fire was the one that was coming out that year in 2013. So I watched The Hunger Games for the first time, and then we went to see Catching Fire in the movie theater the weekend that it came out. So that is like what propelled me to reading, because after that I read, I think, Divergent, which became my entire life in Brandon. You might think that I would want to reread Divergent, but I actually don't. Maybe the first book eventually, but I feel like looking back, I know that it's not that great of a series, while The Hunger Games I feel like will still stand up over time. But The Hunger Games is kind of what like jump-started me back into reading and like finding BookTube, finding whatever, because after I found that, I started making BookTube videos in middle school, and all those videos are privated. I only got like 70 subscribers, so I privated all of those and then restarted my channel back in 2020, if you don't know. But The Hunger Games is what propelled me, and I've had a strong urge lately to reread The Hunger Games and rewatch the movies. And I know that like they're coming out with another movie or show that has the actor from, what's it called, Euphoria. I'm forgetting her name right now, but I love her, and that's really not why I've been wanting to reread this. I literally forgot about that. I've just really been having the urge to reread it lately for like the past like 2 months, so hopefully I can reread it soon. But the next series I also really want to reread is The Mortal Instruments, and this is kind of surprising because The Infernal Devices I think for sure is my preferred series, but something about The Mortal Instruments is very nostalgic for me, and I think I've actually reread at least one of the books in The Infernal Devices before, but I've never reread any of them in The Mortal Instruments, and I've just been really having the urge to reread them. Like I just want to be in that world again, and that was the first series I read by her. I think I read like the first 3, then read The Infernal Devices, and then read the last 3. I remember when City of Heavenly Fire came out, I brought it to 5th grade with me, and it was such a thick book. If you've seen it, it's thick, and I remember like being so happy to read it, and I would bring it every single day in my backpack, that big book, to class so I could read it. And that the series is just so nostalgic for me, and as I said, The Infernal Devices was completely out by the time that I read it, but I remember when City of Heavenly Fire came out, and something about that series is just very, very nostalgic for me, so I would really definitely like to reread it. The next one is one that I read, I think in 2020, and that is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I love Karen Slaughter. I've only read, I think, 3 of her books. I definitely want to read more, but she is definitely like an all-time author. Pretty Girls is one of my favorite all-time books, and I feel like I remember it so well still, but I want to reread it because it just meant so much to me, and it was like one of the first thrillers that I read that really was like, oh, like this could be a genre for me. It really just went to places that other thrillers just don't go all the time, and that's what I really like about Karen Slaughter. She's not afraid to push the envelope. She's not scared to do that. And Pretty Girls really just meant so much to me that I think I just have to reread it. And it completely altered like what genres I read. It wasn't the only book, but it was definitely one of them, because before I joined BookTube in 2020, I barely read thrillers and horror, and that's basically most of what I read now. I read mostly like young adult fantasy, and that's not something I read anymore. And I think that just came with age, but also the things that I was reading. So Pretty Girls is so foundational for me. It feels like it's part of my soul. Literally, like most of these that I want to reread them because they literally feel like a part of me. And the next one is one that did that. It is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I read this one years ago, and this book, I remember I stayed up all night. I used to have this chair that was in my library. I have a library room, which I will definitely be doing like a tour of and a bookshelf tour when I go back in the summer, because I'll have all my books in one place. So I wanted to do that last summer. I just was so busy, I just did not have the time, but I definitely want to do a library tour and a bookshelf tour. But I have a library room, and there used to be a big chair in there. I remember I sat in there all day, all night, and I stayed up and I was sobbing at the end. Not many books can make me cry. Books are less likely to make me cry than like TV shows or even movies. I don't know why, but they are. I have cried a ton over books, but normally I have to be like deep invested into a series. Like I'm pretty sure like The Mortal Instruments has made me cry, Divergent has made me cry, The Hunger Games has made me cry, but that's like a series. For a singular book, like a standalone book, to make me cry is insane. And The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo achieved that, and it really just is such a phenomenal book. I need to reread it. The next one is one of my favorite horror. This is like another one that really like propelled me into reading horror, because this is one of the first horror books that I read that was not young adult, and it's like one of my favorites. I think I read this fall of 2020. It's Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant. I know this book is not going to be for everybody, but this was just so perfect for me. It's about a group of researchers that go over the Mariana Trench, and they are trying to investigate what happened to a previous group of researchers before, because the ship was found with nobody on it, and there was footage, and they believe like in the footage that there are actual mermaids. That's what the first group of researchers went to see, is if there were mermaids. So now they kind of already have proof of that, but they're trying to see like what really went on. And there is a prequel novella that follows the group of first researchers, and I just read that recently this year, actually in 2023. But I really want to reread the first book, because obviously it's longer, but it just really was such a perfect combination for me. It was queer, it had to do with the ocean, which I loved the ocean as a child. I literally had an ocean dictionary that I would read for fun. Like it would just have the animal and about like facts about them, and like I would just read that. Like I love the ocean. I am hoping to take a marine biology class at my school. It counts for a general ed requirement, so I'm hoping that I could take that next year probably. But I love the ocean. It's queer, it has a lot of science in it, and I know that I'm not a STEM major at all, but science is something that does have my heart. AP biology was one of my favorite classes. If I didn't have to do math in biology, I know you have to take math classes, so I think you have to go up to calculus, really, and that is like what kind of deterred me. But I do really love science, and it also has sign language in it, which I took sign language in high school as well, and I love the deaf community. I love sign language. I really want to get back into it. But Into the Drowning Deep just had so many things in it that meant so much to me, and I just absolutely loved the writing, loved everything about it. It was phenomenal. This one is one that I read last year, and that is Black Girl Unlimited, and this book is just very foundational to my experience. I did not traditionally grow up with like the Black girl experience, but so many things in this book I could relate to, and I just absolutely loved everything about this book. I feel like this is a book I want to reread every year. It's a very quick book. It's told in more like prose than it is like traditional writing, so it's very quick to read. The audiobook is probably like around 6 hours, 5-6 hours, super quick, but it just has so much to say and so much that I relate to. I really do want to reread this very frequently throughout my life, because I feel like it'll really ground me and remind me of a lot of things that I've experienced. Really just an amazing book, and if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. Even if you don't relate to it, I think it can really open your eyes to a lot of things that Black women and Black girls experience. This next one is another one kind of in the same vein, and that is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. I really do adore Elizabeth Acevedo, and I can't wait for her adult debut coming out later this year, but I have read all her young adult books, and this one's actually my favorite. I know some people like The Poet X better, but With the Fire on High, it is the only one of hers that is actually told like a traditional novel. The Poet X and also Clap When You Land are told in like verse, while this one is told very traditionally, but I just resonated with the story so much, and even though it's actually really not something I relate to at all, I just really loved seeing this story being told, because it's a story that needed to be told. Loved seeing all the ups and downs. There was joy, there was sadness, there was everything throughout this book. And we do follow a single mother who is a teen, and I think that's a very unique experience, but it happens a lot. So I really loved seeing that experience, because I feel like we see like teen mom or something like that, which is not always accurate. It's a reality TV show. And so I really love seeing her experience in this book. And then also she likes to cook, and I really love the cooking aspects of this book. I think it's just such a meaningful story to me. I love Elizabeth Acevedo. She's one of my favorite authors, so I would really like to reread some of her work, and this one happens to be my favorite. Another one of my favorite books, all these are like my favorite books, but I have The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I would also put Wolfsong on here, because Wolfsong made me sob like a baby. I don't think a book has made me cry like that much in a very long time. But for Wolfsong, I have not completed the series. I've only read that first one. I haven't read the next 3, but they do follow different couples throughout the series. But The House in the Cerulean Sea is my first work that I was exposed to by TJ Klune, and this one just absolutely like tore through my soul. It was so wholesome, but it had so much to say about being different and how that can impact you and feeling isolated and alone. And that is something that I can definitely relate to. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Most people really can. And so I just really enjoyed that story so much. I love the writing, I love the romance, I love the kids in it. Lucy is literally so cute, and I just really want to reread this because it meant so much to me, and I think it did definitely make me cry. Not sob like Wolfsong though, but it made me cry. And I remember I read this with some of my friends, and we buddy read it, and it was such a good experience, even though some of them didn't like love it the way that I love it or really even like it. But it was such a good experience reading it with them. So I really like to just like go back and maybe read it a different format or something like that, because the story just really meant so much to me, and it really just warmed my heart in a way that most books do not ever do. This next one I think I read, I don't know, maybe 2021. Well, anyways, it's Verity by Colleen Hoover. I know people don't like this book. I know people shit on this book, but I love this book. I'm not like a Colleen Hoover stan by any means. I did not really like Ugly Love, and I think that the other book that I read by her, It Ends With Us, is okay. It's a decent book. Like, it's an okay story, but the way that it's framed is not my favorite. There are certain aspects of it that I didn't like, and so she's just not my favorite author. But Verity took over my life. I think about this book almost every single day. I absolutely adore this story. I don't know what it is. I think it's just such drama and such tea, and it's just all over the place, but I just absolutely love it. It kept me hooked, it kept me reading, and I just want to experience that again. I just want to be hooked. And even though I know what happens at the end, I feel like they also came out with like a bonus chapter that was in Barnes & Noble exclusive editions for I think like the 10th anniversary of Verity or something like that, and I went to the store, read the chapter, and I feel like so many things changed. So I want to reread the story knowing what happens at the end and in that bonus chapter epilogue, and see if I can like dissect it more. Because if you don't know, in this book there's kind of like 2 teams at the end of like what you believe is real or not. And so I feel like knowing what I know now, maybe it'll impact my experience more of like what I think. I think it's not going to change, but I think I'll be able to pick up more when reading the story. So I definitely need to reread this one. Another thriller is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. I think I read this one in 2021. I just really enjoyed this story. There is so much to say in this one. I know some people are not a big fan, but I think that there's just so much commentary on what it's like to be a woman, and I really enjoyed that. I liked the setting at the college, and I think that there's sometimes in thrillers I read them so quickly that I feel like I don't get as much out of them as I want to get out of them, if that makes sense. And this is one of those. I have a couple more like that on this list, but this is just one where like I feel like I need to reread it to really squeeze my whole experience out of this book. I think that there was so much that I missed that I didn't pay attention to, and I just want to go back and read it and make sure that I'm really taking it all in, because I know this book is excellent. I love it, but there are still things that I feel like are missing, and I would like to go back and kind of rectify that. Another one that I feel that same way with is The Last Housewife. This is also one that has a lot of commentary on what it's like to be a woman, but this one's a little bit darker, a little bit grittier. And I actually just read this one last year, not even like a whole year ago, but something about this, I feel like I just need to reread it to really go back and pay attention to every single detail and get the intelligence that was put into this story. This is a very clever story, and I don't think I picked up on all of that. So I would really like to go back and reread this one. It's a phenomenal book, and if you think you can handle the trigger warnings, I would highly recommend it, because it's just a phenomenal story, and I just really want to reread it again because, as I said, I just need to know every single thing in this story. I feel like there's so many connections that I missed, and I just, again, want to rectify it. I feel like I keep repeating myself. A lot of these that I want to reread for the same reason, but that is why I want to reread that one. This next one is Follow Me to Ground. So I was debating on putting this one or The Echo Wife. I think I read them for the same book club, the Stacks of Strange book club that I am in, and I was really active in it in 2020. It was like super active. It's not as active anymore, but in 2020 we were really there and present, and we read this book and The Echo Wife. And The Echo Wife, I'm scared that if I reread it I won't like it as much, but Follow Me to Ground I think is just such a weird, strange story. The Echo Wife is also weird, but Follow Me to Ground is really, really weird, and I feel like this is just one that I would like to go back and reread because it is so strange. And this one is not one that has a ton of plot. It's very character driven. There's not a ton that goes on, but something about like the weirdness and the whimsy and the horror of it all, but it was so subtle. It wasn't scary. It just had this atmosphere to it. I just absolutely adore this book, and I think that I would really love to reread it in like the summer. I associate this book heavily with summer. I also have A Dowry of Blood on here, which I read last year, I'm pretty sure, and this one is again one of the most clever books that I've ever read. The way that it's written and the way that it's told, there's so much to it, so much nuance that I feel like I missed. And knowing what I know that happens at the end, I would really like to go back and reread it. This is another really character-based one. There's not much plot going on, but the story just told, or it had so much to it. I feel like that's like a big thing that I like to reread, is books that heavily are based around women. If you look, Pretty Girls, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Black Girl Unlimited, With the Fire on High, They Never Learn, The Last Housewife, Follow Me to Ground, this one, even some of the ones I have coming up are heavily based around the experience of being a woman. And apparently that's just like a theme that I really love. The writing is just stunning, and I think that this is a book that you could reread over and over and over and over and over again and still get something new out of it every single time. This next one is a thriller, and that is Confessions. It's kind of like blowing up again since I read it, and I really, really liked Confessions. But there's a lot of it that I don't remember, and I think I gave it 4 stars, but I think upon reread it could be a favorite of all time. So I would really like to go back and reread this because there's a lot, again, that I don't remember. This is one that I read extremely fast. I just remember how I felt, and I remember like the basic summary of it. I don't remember a lot of like the twist or the plot, so I think that this could actually be like a really fun one to reread because I think it could actually like shock and surprise me again because I don't remember what happened. I also have Brother by Anya Alborn on here. This is one that I also gave 4 stars, but I think about very frequently, and I think upon reread it could be a 5-star. This one has a lot of commentary on family and betrayal in a way. I think a lot of betrayal. I feel like in Brother I just need to like slow down a little bit and really like take in the story and the words that are on the page more than I did the first time. So I definitely would like to reread it so I can really just like soak in the story. I also have The Butterfly Garden, which is actually one that I have a reading vlog on. It's like one of my most watched videos on my channel, and I just really enjoyed the story. It's another 4-star for me, but this one was really impactful, and I have really just like good memories of this because I made that reading vlog. I don't often make reading vlogs about singular books. I think I only have like 2, but they're like some of my most watched videos on my channel, if not like my most watched videos. I just have really good memories with this book, so it's one that I would like to reread, even though it's such like a sad story. This is another one that's heavily about like women and the experience of women, and I would venture to say like almost like trafficking. Then I have a graphic novel series, and that's called Check Please. This one we follow like a new freshman in college, and he starts playing on his hockey team, and he is gay, he makes baking videos, he's super sweet, and he has a romance with the captain of the hockey team. And it is just so cute and heartwarming. I think if you like Heartstopper, you could really love Check Please. It's a phenomenal graphic novel series, and I think it's highly underrated. This one just really like it. I love this one way more than Heartstopper personally, but I know some people just adore Heartstopper. I think Heartstopper's cute, but Check Please is gonna do it for me every time. I absolutely love Check Please, but it is adult and it is like steamier than Heartstopper, but I absolutely love Check Please, and I just love hockey and books and graphic novels and stuff like that, so I think that's also something that pushes one over the edge for me. And speaking of pushing, the next one I have is The Push by Ashley Audrain. This is another one that's heavily based around being a woman and motherhood. My mom actually just read this one for the first time, and she gave it 4 stars, but this one's like a 5-star for me. I love The Push. I think about this one again like all of the time, and this is another one where I've actually like started to like forget some of the stuff that's happened, so I would really like to go back and reread it and like refresh myself, and I think it could really take me off guard again. But I also know like how I felt and the things that I took away from this book, and I would really just like to like refresh all of that. It's just a phenomenal story. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I just watched this movie actually called False Positive, and I feel like it was trying to do like what this book did, and it just didn't do that at all. False Positive was not a great movie. It was not the worst, but not great. Then I have 2 more left. So the next one is A Lesson in Thorns. This is like the first real like romance that I read, and this one is very steamy. I think I read it when I was in middle school. It was definitely before high school, because I moved houses like right before, like a week or 2 before I started my freshman year of high school, and so I remember where I read this, and this was like my house in middle school. So yeah, which is kind of surprising, which is why I want to reread this one, because I just remember being so shocked and flabbergasted. So I kind of want to reread it as an adult and see what I think of it now, because it's very steamy and has a lot of different like things that like even someone who reads like a lot of contemporary romance, I feel like would be shocking for them. And I barely even read any romance at that point, because I was literally in middle school. If it wasn't young adult, I wasn't reading it. So even like contemporary adult romances, like this goes past that. So I would like to reread it and see what I think of it now. And the last one I have on this list is Gone to See the Riverman by Christopher Triana. This is another one I read last year. I think about this book all the time. I consider it like a favorite of all time. But when I checked on Goodreads, I gave this book 4 stars or 4.5. But it was like round down to a 4-star. I don't know in what universe. This book is literally like a mind fuck. Like, this book had me on a different level. If you've ever been high, even from weed, and you're not like greening out but almost greening out, that's kind of what this is. Like, you're tripping. Or similar also to like shrooms or anything like that, but I don't have any experience with that at all, so I wouldn't know what that's like personally. But and not that I know what greening out is like either, because I'm a wholesome child, but I would think that's what this would feel like. It just is literally like such a trip, and I remember so much of what happens in this story, but it's just something that like I want to experience over, because it was just so crazy and insane. I just can't do, like, literally I don't even have words to say, because this book is just so unique, and it feels like nothing else I've ever read. So I definitely want to reread this one. So these are the books that I need to reread ASAP Rocky. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I had such a fun time thinking about all these books and like the nostalgia of it all. These books just make me so happy. These are definitely some of my favorite books. Like, if you want to know some of my favorite books, like, this is a pretty good list. I have way more, but this is definitely a pretty good representation of books that I really love. So if you wanted to know, now you know. If you made it to the end of this video, leave the little mermaid emoji down below for Into the Drowning Deep, and I will see y'all in my next one. Bye, everybody. I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking in moments we live in, yeah. You got the nerve to be on me, faking your life for the hurting. If you got my number, don't add me, cause baby,